Shalom, my friends. I want to share an incredible thing with you. Every year on the festival of Purim, we read the scroll of Esther, Megillat Esther, and it tells the story of the Jewish people in exile in Persia. And we stop following the ways of the Torah, so an evil man, Haman, rises up against us and wants to wipe us all out in a final solution. A Jewish woman named Esther, she becomes the queen, and basically she saves the day, and the Jewish people are okay. If you look in the scroll of Esther, you see that the writing is in very uniform formatting, all the way up until just before the end, where we see an immense formatting change. What's going on in this part of the text is that we won the war, and we killed many people, including 10 of Haman's sons, and these are their names. It's a crazy formatting change for a very insignificant detail, by the way. We never hear about the sons before or after, and we don't really need to know their names. What's also strange is that it has the word ve'et, in between each name, unlike any other list of names in the Megillah. Ve'et means and also, and also. So we have to understand these anomalies. The Talmud actually teaches us two reasons that there's the formatting change for this insignificant detail. The first one is that Haman's sons will never rise again from their downfall, which is pretty obvious because they're dead. So the other reason the Talmud gives is that these names are in fact a shirah, which means a song. And we see other songs in the Torah. We see the Song of the Sea and Ha'azinu, and they also have formatting changes. So our sages teach us that songs in the Torah are actually prophetic. They're often referring to future events. And the word ve'et, what does that teach us? The Talmud also says that the word ve'et teaches us to include something or someone extra. So let's look into the Megillah at this part of the text. In chapter 9, verse 6, it says this: In Shushan, the capital, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, including the 10 sons of Haman. The king then says to Esther, "What is your petition? And it shall be granted. What is your request? And it shall be done." The most powerful man on the face of the planet has just offered Esther anything she wants. Now, you'd really hope that she asks for something significant at this point, like immunity from the law for the Jewish people, or no tax ever for the Jewish people, or a palace with a beautiful place to live for the Jewish people, or even to go back to the land of Israel. You've got to ask for something significant. So what does Esther ask for? She says this: "If it pleases the king, let it be granted also tomorrow, as was done in Shushan today, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged." What? What are you doing, Esther? Firstly, they're dead already. And can you ask for something more significant? We actually see precedent of this before. David HaMelech, King David, would hang some of his dead enemies just as a deterrent. But to ask the king for this when you could ask for anything, it seems a crazy thing to do. So our sages teach us an idea. They say the word machar, she said tomorrow. Machar means now. There is a normal, simple meaning. But tomorrow also refers to the future. There's a tomorrow which is later. So we see that in this part of the text, there are 3 references to the future. Number 1, the formatting change, which is a shira, a prophetic song. Number 2, the word ve'et, which comes to include something. And number 3, the word machar. Machar also meaning in the future. So let's look into the future. Is there any parallel event? That brings us to October the 16th, 1946. What happened then? Front page of the New York Times. We see Goering ends his life by poison, 10 others hanged in Nuremberg prison for Nazi war crimes. Wow, we see an amazing thing. We see an exact parallel. There were 10 Nazis hanged. Now, this is significant because there were actually 24 Nazis on trial. And of those, 12 got sentenced to hanging. The other 12 were either acquitted or sent to prison. Of those 12 sentenced to hanging, one of them ran away, and one of them committed suicide the day before. So in the end, only 10, the exact number of Haman's sons, only 10 were actually hanged. And they were punished in the same way and for exactly the same crime, trying to wipe out all the Jews. We see a pre-established connection, by the way, between the Nazis and Haman's sons. Hitler himself said in a radio broadcast, January the 30th, 1944, that if the Nazis were defeated, the Jews could celebrate the destruction of Europe in a second triumphant Purim festival. And even before the war, in the 1930s, the European Jews were connecting Haman and Hitler. And they took particular joy in the Megillah reading, especially the hanging of Haman's sons, interpreting it as the eventual downfall of the Nazis. So we have this connection. Actually, on the front page of Habakkuk newspaper, on the 18th of October, 1946, 2 days after the trials, we see it talks about Nuremberg, here underlined in red, and just below that, B'nai Haman, that the Nazis were compared to the sons of Haman. The truth is, this could just be a coincidence. There are enough texts and enough events that you might find some parallels in history. But I want to share with you something now that pushes this beyond any possibility of being a coincidence. About at least 1,000 years ago, we see a tradition of there being small letters in the Megillah. The Midrash to Rabbi Akiva, which wasn't actually written by the Rabbi Akiva, but it brings this idea that we have small letters in the Megillah. And over the next 200 or so years, we see many different versions of what these small letters are. Now, we're not sure that the original text of the Megillah actually had small letters, and they're not even mentioned in the Talmud. So where this tradition comes from, we're not so sure. But we have many different versions: 2 small letters, 3 small letters, 4 small letters. Right? In 1516, Daniel Bomberg, in his printing press, printed the Mikrot Gedolot, which is an authoritative Tanakh, books of the Jewish people. And in 1524, the second edition came out. The publisher, Yaakov ben Chaim ibn Adonijah, quote, devoted immense effort to choose which one of these versions was most authoritative, and he finally chose the one that became the standard text of the Megillah from then on, and appears in basically every single scroll for the last 500 years and every printed text. So let's look at that. So here we have 2 of the oldest Megillahs in existence. 15th century Iberian Megillah from 1465 actually, which is before the printing press, and also another 15th century Megillah from Europe. So let's see what the small letters are that appear. Here you see in the Iberian one, in the first name of Haman's sons, there's a very, very small taf. And in the 7th name, a small shin, and in the last name, a small zayin. We see over here again in the European one, a small taf, a small shin, and a small zayin. These are the only 3 small letters in the Megillah, and it was chosen about 500 years ago to be the standardized text. So amazing about that. Here I've got it again, taf and shin and zayin. So if we go back to the newspaper article that we showed you from Habakkuk newspaper, we see on the article the year in the Hebrew calendar that the Nazis were hanged. It says it up here. And would you believe it? Yep, it's the year Taf Shin Zayin. It's the year that exactly parallels the small letters that we find in the standardized version of the text from 500 years ago. If we look at Haaretz newspaper on October the 16th, 1946, we actually see here also Taf Shin Zayin. This is remarkable. This is so remarkable. We really have to just look over these facts and statistics. Number one, we have 3 references to a future event in the original text, in the relevant part of the text. Only 10 of Haman's sons were hanged. This is actually remarkable because there are different traditions. Did he have 30 sons or 90 sons or 208 sons? However many he had, only 10 of them got hanged. This particular version was chosen from several others by the publisher of the 2nd edition. The 3 small letters appear in the right order. That's a 1 in 10,648 chance, seeing as there are 22 letters in the alphabet. These are the only small letters, and they're in the relevant part of the text. It's not like one letter is at the beginning of the text and the other letters at the end of the text and there's something in the middle. They all appear together in the right order in the names of Haman's sons. Then we see a pre-established connection between the sons of Haman and the Nazis. These 2 events are already connected before they happened. And then we see only 10 Nazis were hanged. Out of a possible 24, I think it's actually much more than 24 because thousands of Nazis deserve to be hanged. And finally, they were hanged in the exact year of the millennia that matches the small letters. That's 1 in 1,000 chance. So let's look at this very clearly. What is the probability of this happening? To match the number of sons hanged, 1 in 30, 90, 208, to the number of Nazis hanged, 1 in 24, that's a 1 in 720 possibility, up to 1 in 4,992. And to match the small letters, which is 1 in 10,648, to the year the Nazis were hanged, that's 1 in 1,000, that's 1 in 10,648,000 chance. We really have to get clear on this. This is pinpoint accuracy. If any other number of sons were hanged, or any other number of Nazis, if 2 of them had committed suicide, or an extra one ran away, or more people were convicted, it just wouldn't have matched any other letter combo out of any other possibility of any other number of letters. If there were 2 small letters, if there were 4 small letters, any other year that they were hanged, it just wouldn't have matched up. There's so many different moving parts that had to come in line perfectly for this to actually happen. I spoke to an applied statistician, and he says even the 1 in 10,648,000 is like rolling the same number on a 6-sided dice 15 times in a row. You roll a 3, and then you roll another 3, and another 3, and another 3, and you keep going, and you're just saying, well, it's just chance, it's just luck. This is incredible. I just want to share with you 2 other amazing things that we see. Number one is that October the 16th, 1946 was actually Hoshana Rabbah. And our tradition teaches us that on the 7th day of the Sukkot holiday, on Hoshana Rabbah, the judgments of the nations of the world is finalized. Judgments are aroused and carried out on that day. This is, by our tradition, the day that the evil nations of the world gets punished. We also see that in the names of Haman's sons, there's one very big letter. It's the letter Vav. So the Gemara says that it's there to show us that all of the sons were hanged on one pole, which is very interesting, but it's also a very significant formatting change for an insignificant detail about insignificant people. Turns out that when were the Nazis hanged? They were hanged in the 6th millennium. The letter Vav is the number 6. Here's another just extra little cute thing, not part of the proof, but we see this Newsweek magazine report, 12 days after the trials. Kingsbury Smith, the American journalist, wrote out what happened at the hangings, and this is what he says. The last paragraph, only Julius Streicher went without dignity. He had to be pushed across the floor, wild-eyed and screaming Heil Hitler. Mounting the steps, he cried out, and now I go to God. He stared at the witnesses facing the gallows and shouted, PurimFest, 1946. Purim is a Jewish feast. Now, obviously, we know the Nazis knew about Purim. Hitler himself mentioned it in the radio report, but it's still a crazy, amazing thing for him to shout out just before he dies. So, my friends, this is so crazy to me that I just want to find anyone who can come up with any feasible, natural explanation for this. Even if someone could give me an explanation for where the small letters came from in the first place and how Yaakov ben Chaim ben Anadija chose that out of the versions and why she said machar, tomorrow, and all. If you could give me an explanation for each and every event, that still doesn't explain how they line up in pinpoint accuracy. Once there's too many coincidences that bring something together, it's very, very difficult to say that's a coincidence, especially given the immense statistical probabilities. So I'm going to offer anyone $10,648 if they can actually come up with some explanation for this. You can write to me, PurimFest1946@gmail.com, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you. By the way, for me, this is clear evidence that the books of the Jewish people are divinely inspired books. The Torah itself is the word of God. And this is very empowering because we could use this to improve ourselves and make the world a much better, sweeter, conscious, non-judgmental, conscientious, loving place. Bezrat Hashem, I'm looking forward to hearing from you.